He came to our house to bless it, to offer prayers and read scripture. Nothing more. But the way his eyes lingered on mine, the warmth of his hand on my shoulder, it felt different, unexpectedly powerful. That night changed something in me. Because when he visited, he didn't just share guidance. He uncovered a truth I had never been ready to face. That Sunday evening was meant to be simple, a house blessing and tea. My mother had invited him after church, proudly announcing that our new pastor was finally going to bring a sense of peace into our home. She said it with a laugh, but I could hear the weight behind her words. Ever since my father passed, she had leaned deeper into her faith, holding on to it as though it was the only thing keeping us steady. I didn't argue. I never did. I was the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who bowed his head when told, who recited verses without hesitation, who never gave her a reason to doubt. Except for the part of me I never spoke about. A part one had tried to bury so deep I could almost forget, until he showed up. When I heard, "young new pastor," I pictured someone older, stern-faced, maybe gray around the edges. Instead, the man who walked into our home looked barely 35, with smooth skin, sharp cheekbones, and a voice that could pull words from you before you even realized you were speaking. He carried a quiet strength, like the calm just before a storm. "Thank you for having me," he said warmly, shaking my mother's hand with both of his, like he truly meant it. She beamed. "We've been looking forward to this. This house could use your presence, and maybe your cinnamon tea." He grinned, making her laugh. Then he turned to me. His handshake was steady, but it wasn't the grip that made my throat tighten. It was the way he looked at me, directly, openly, as though he saw through the polite smile I gave, past the pressed Sunday clothes, past the silence I had practiced for years. "And you must be Micah," he said. "Yes, I am. It's good to meet you." His smile was gentle, and I let go of his hand too quickly. Dinner passed as usual, my mother filling most of the space with words, my grandmother chiming in here and there, and me sitting quietly, stealing glances when I thought no one would notice. He listened with care, asked thoughtful questions, and laughed at just the right times. He was good, maybe too good. Afterward, we moved to the living room for the blessing. He asked if we wanted to pray together, and of course, my mother lit up with excitement. "Micah," she said, "stand with him. He'll lead." I nodded and stepped forward. He placed a hand on my shoulder as he began to pray. His voice was low, smooth, almost melodic. I tried to focus on the words, but all I felt was the warmth of his hand, steady and grounding. It lasted only a moment, but I noticed. My heartbeat quickened. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was nothing more than a simple gesture. But when the prayer ended and he looked at me again, his gaze lingered a second longer than expected. Later, after tea had been poured and small talk had faded, he asked my mother if he could speak with me privately. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "Micah, take him to the den." We sat across from each other in the quiet room. The soft hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound between us. "You seem thoughtful," he said finally. I blinked. "Sorry?" "Quiet, focused. Like something's on your mind." I shrugged, avoiding his eyes. "That's just how I am." He studied me for a moment before replying. "You don't have to tell me anything, Micah. But I want you to know, I've seen that look before. In other young people. In those who carry something they're not ready to name." My breath caught. I don't know what you mean." He didn't push. He just nodded, his voice calm. "If you ever do, I'll be here." That should have been it, just a kind man offering gentle support. But the way he looked at me after those words wasn't pity. It wasn't distant. It was something else, something softer, something sharper. And when he stood to leave, he placed a hand on my arm, not a casual pat, but a slow, steady touch just above my wrist. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I sat in that room long after the front door closed, long after my mother started the dishwasher, long after my grandmother fell asleep in her chair. I just sat there, staring at the place where his hand had rested, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Trying, and failing. Because deep in my chest, I knew this was only the beginning. And I had no idea where it would lead. He returned that Thursday evening. My mother had invited him again, thrilled by his warmth and sincerity. She straightened cushions, reheated leftovers, and praised him endlessly. "He's not like the last one," she said while brushing crumbs off the table. "That man made you feel small just for breathing. But this one, he actually sees people." I didn't answer. I just nodded, the way I always did. When he arrived, he wasn't dressed in his usual button-up and tie. This time, he wore a soft beige sweater. That Thursday, he arrived differently, no crisp tie, no button-up. Instead, he wore a soft beige sweater, sleeves pushed back at the elbows, dark slacks that somehow made him look both relaxed and certain of himself. He greeted my mother with a warm hug and handed her a paper bag. "I brought cinnamon rolls," he said, smiling. "Figured Micah might like them." My mother lit up. "You remembered? That's so thoughtful." I glanced up. His eyes found mine, and the smallest smile passed between us, quiet, steady, carrying meaning I couldn't quite name. Dinner carried on like usual. My grandmother drifted off after the soup, and my mother stepped out to take a phone call. Suddenly, it was just the two of us at the table, the air heavy with everything unsaid. "I wanted to apologize," he said softly, turning his mug in his hands. "If I made you uncomfortable last time. That wasn't my intention." "You didn't," I answered too quickly. I cleared my throat. "I mean, no, you didn't." His gaze lingered. "Are you sure?" I nodded. My hand rested on the table, close to his. Closer than it should have been. "Micah," he said gently, leaning forward. "Do you trust me?" The question caught in my throat. After a long moment, I nodded. "Yes." His voice softened. "You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to." But I meant what I said before. If something feels too heavy to carry alone, I'll listen. I stared down at my tea, the steam long gone. It was just a cup of silence now. "I've always done what I was supposed to," I admitted. "I followed the rules. I never strayed. And I thought if I kept doing everything right, maybe the part of me that didn't belong would disappear." He didn't interrupt. He just listened. "There's something inside me," I whispered. "Something I've buried so deep I try to forget it exists. But it keeps coming back, in dreams, in feelings I can't control. And I don't know what to do with it." His reply was calm, steady. "You're not broken, Micah." I blinked at him. "The scriptures have been used in ways that wound," he continued gently. "But that doesn't mean that was ever their true purpose. I know what it feels like, to beg God to change you, to believe that if you're good enough, maybe the struggle will vanish. I've been there." His words cut straight through me. My chest tightened. "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. "I tried to be someone I wasn't," he said. "I built a life the world wanted to see. And eventually, it all fell apart. That's when I learned the cost of hiding. And I promised myself I wouldn't let someone else carry that same silence alone." I stared at the table, not daring to lift my eyes. And yet, I felt something shift in me, a small release, like the weight I'd been dragging for years had lightened, if only by an ounce. Then my mother's voice called from the kitchen, cheerful and unknowing. "Pastor, would you like another cup of tea?" We both flinched. He straightened, clearing his throat. "Yes, thank you," he called back. When she re-entered, she poured him a fresh cup and smiled at me. You're good for him, Pastor. Micah opens up more when you're around. It's nice. He gave her a soft smile. He's easy to talk to. And just like that, the room folded back into its normal shape. That night, when the house had gone quiet, I stepped outside onto the porch. The cool night wrapped around me as I sat on the top step, blanket pulled close. My mind kept replaying his words, his presence, the way he had listened. The screen door creaked. I turned to see him there in the dim light. "May I sit with you?" he asked. I nodded. He settled beside me, close but not too close. We sat in silence, the night sky above us, the weight of our thoughts between us. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in my struggle. His words still echoed, "You're not broken." And in that silence, under the stars, something in me finally believed it might be true. "You kissed me." "I know," he said softly. "And I haven't stopped thinking about it." I exhaled slowly. "Me either." He stepped toward me, close enough that I could feel his breath. "Micah, do you feel guilty?" "Yes," I whispered. "But not because of you. Because I don't want to." He stopped right in front of me, eyes steady. We're told to feel shame for needing connection. But connection itself isn't wrong. Pretending it doesn't matter, that's what breaks people. His words hit something deep, echoing through all the years I had tried to silence myself. "If this is wrong," he said quietly, "tell me now." My chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. "I don't want it to be wrong." He leaned in slowly, giving me time, always giving me time. When our lips met, it wasn't hesitation anymore, it was honesty. A release of everything we'd been holding back. The weight of unspoken days between us broke open in that moment. My hands clung to him like I was afraid the truth would slip away if I let go. He held me, steady and sure, and for the first time the storm inside me felt less like chaos and more like clarity. We pulled apart just enough to see each other clearly. His eyes were heavy, his voice low. "We should stop." "Should we?" I breathed. Silence hung between us, charged, undeniable. Then he kissed me again, and the question dissolved. It didn't go further. Not that night. But we stood there in the quiet, both of us trembling with everything we didn't have words for. He cupped my face gently, like I was fragile glass he didn't want to break. "I've never let myself feel this before," he admitted, voice raw. I could only nod, too dazed to speak. "I should take you home," he whispered. "I know." He stepped back slowly, his touch lingering like heat even after it was gone. We didn't talk on the drive. We didn't need to. Everything unspoken was already moving between us. And as I watched the church fade in the rearview mirror, I knew this wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of a storm. That night, rain set the mood. Not a storm, just a steady rhythm against the windows. My mother was away at a church retreat, my grandmother asleep by 8. The house was quiet. Too quiet. At 9:12, my phone buzzed. A simple message, "I'm outside." My heart leapt. I slipped downstairs barefoot, careful not to wake anyone. When I opened the door, Elijah stood on the porch, damp from the rain, shadows soft across his face. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "And yet," I said, leaning against the doorframe, "you are." His eyes searched mine for a reason to turn back. Whatever he saw must have convinced him otherwise. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. We sat together in the dim living room, the lamplight barely holding the dark at bay. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "If I stay tonight, things might change between us. Are you ready for that?" I swallowed, my voice catching. "I don't know. But I don't want to keep pretending anymore." He nodded, his hand brushing my cheek with a reverence that made my skin shiver. "Neither do I." And when he kissed me again, it wasn't reckless. It was steady, deliberate, like a vow made in silence. Whatever this was, however uncertain, it had begun. You regret it? I asked. He paused. No. I regret waiting this long to let it happen. I traced a finger along his shirt front, feeling his heartbeat race beneath. What happens now? I don't know, he whispered. But tonight. I just wanted to feel like myself. And with you, I do. He kissed my forehead and pulled me tighter, his chin resting on my hair. I'm scared, I admitted into the hollow of his throat. Me too, he said. But I think I'd be more afraid of losing this. Of losing you. We stayed on that couch for hours, barely sleeping, just holding each other, breathing, listening to the rain. By morning, the world hadn't changed. But I had. I'd crossed a threshold I could never uncross, and didn't want to. Because in his arms, I felt something I never thought I'd feel. Not shame. Not sin. But safety. And that feeling was more dangerous than anything we had done. Because now, I knew what it was like to be wanted. And I wasn't sure I could ever go back to pretending I wasn't. The day after Elijah stayed, I woke up alone. The couch still warm on one side, the blanket tangled around my legs, his scent faint but unmistakable. My heart sank at the silence. No footsteps in the hall. Just the ticking clock and the low hum of the refrigerator. He was gone. On the coffee table, a note, my name written in neat cursive. Micah, I had to leave before your mom returned. Last night was more than I can explain, but we need to be careful. Please trust me. Elijah. I read it 3 times, then pressed it to my chest. It wasn't a goodbye. But it wasn't a promise either. By the time my mom returned that evening, I had scrubbed every trace of him from the room, made the couch, aired the pillows, sprayed the blanket like my life depended on it. Everything okay? She asked, cheerful, setting her bags down. Yeah, I said quickly. Just a quiet day. But inside, I was screaming why. Why? Why? The week dragged by. I busied myself with chores, music, half-written journal entries. Nothing silenced the thoughts that circled back to him. What we did. What it meant. Whether he felt it too, or if I was just a moment of weakness for a man drowning in his own demons. He didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up. When Sunday came, I didn't know whether to expect him in the pulpit. But there he was, tall, composed, radiant in his black suit, Bible in hand. His voice calm, steady. Like nothing had happened. His sermon? The dangers of temptation. Every word landed like a dagger dressed in scripture. I couldn't look at him. And when the final hymn played, I slipped out before anyone could stop me, my throat burning from everything I wasn't allowed to say. Monday. Nothing. Tuesday. Silence. By Wednesday, I broke. I sat on the church steps after dark, hoodie pulled tight, heart pounding so loud I swore it rattled the stained glass behind me. I wanted him to appear, to tell me it had been real. Instead, I got a text, I'm sorry. You deserve better than me. 12 words. That's all he gave me. 12 words for a kiss that shattered my world. For a night that changed everything. I didn't reply. I couldn't. He wasn't just distancing himself. He was erasing me. For 2 weeks, I became a ghost. Ate when I had to. Smiled when my mom asked. Avoided church like it was poison. But he was everywhere, on the curve of the couch, in the cinnamon scent on my hoodie, in the ache between my ribs when I remembered his voice whispering my name. One sleepless night, I did something reckless. I walked to the church. Midnight. Streets silent. Doors locked, except one. I slipped inside. The sanctuary glowed faintly from the moon through stained glass. I sat in the back pew, staring at the altar. The same hands that held the Bible had once held me. The same lips that preached salvation had once whispered, "You're beautiful." It made me sick. And yet, I still wanted him. Micah. His voice behind me made me flinch. I turned. Elijah stood there, coat half-buttoned, hair messy, eyes tired. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I could ask you the same," I shot back. "You've been avoiding me." He lowered his gaze. "I didn't know how to face you." "You left," I said, my voice cracking. "You held me like I mattered, and then you preached like I was sin." His jaw tightened. "That wasn't what the sermon was about." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare lie." He stepped closer, voice breaking. "Micah," I was scared. So was I. His frustration spilled out. "You have no idea what it's like, standing in the pulpit, carrying this, trying to be what everyone expects me to be." "And what about me?" I whispered. "What about what we were building?" He hesitated. Then finally, looked me in the eye. "I still feel it," he said. "Every night I see your face. I hear your voice. You made me feel worth something." My heart shattered all over again. "Then why pretend I don't exist?" He reached for my hand, trembling. "Because I didn't think I was allowed to want something that much. But I do. I want you, Micah. I don't care anymore who sees it." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to fall into it again. But I couldn't, not without proof. So I pulled my hand back. "Then prove it." I walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. Days later, the church bulletin said Elijah was on spiritual sabbatical. My mom mentioned it over pancakes like nothing had shifted in my world. I smiled, nodded, played along. But inside, I was still sitting in that sanctuary, clutching the echo of his words. Then, 1 week later, I opened the door and found him standing on my porch. No collar, no Bible. Just Elijah. Rain clinging to his lashes. "Hi," he said softly. I said nothing. "I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything," he continued, voice shaking. "But, can I come in?" I stepped aside. He entered carefully, like the walls might collapse if he spoke too loud. "I resigned," he said. The word hit like thunder. "You what?" I told the board everything. Not all the details, but enough. I couldn't keep preaching freedom while hiding who I am. Or who I love. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "I did," he said firmly. "Because I wanted to look in the mirror again. And more than that, I wanted to look at you, and not feel like I failed the best thing in my life." My throat closed. He stepped closer. "I was a coward. But you made me brave, Micah. I want to try again. Not in secret. Not in shame. If you'll have me." He reached out, not touching, just offering. This time, I took his hand. Tight. We stood there in silence, holding something fragile and new. Slowly, the weight lifted. The guilt. The fear. The hiding. Later, we sat on the porch as the sun set, warm light spilling across the street. "I want to build something real," he said. "With me?" "With you." I laughed softly. "What does that look like?" "Honest conversations. Walks in daylight. Maybe even dinner that doesn't involve sneaking out the back door." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. And that evening, beneath the stars, he handed me a small chain with a silver anchor charm. "For when you feel lost," he said. "So you remember you're not drifting alone anymore." I let him clasp it around my neck. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself. Months passed. Slowly, we built a life, quiet but ours. He found work at a shelter, mentoring teens. I wrote more than ever. My mom adjusted. My grandmother simply said, "You always did glow when he was around." We moved into a small apartment with creaky floors and good light. We laughed over burnt toast. We weren't hiding anymore. And sometimes, when he wrapped his arms around me from behind, I'd think back to that first night, the fear, the fire, the storm. He was supposed to be my pastor. But instead, he became my partner. My peace. My beginning. And that night on the porch? It saved me in all the ways I never knew I needed. It wasn't easy. We broke rules. We broke apart. But in the end, we found something worth rebuilding. So if you've ever loved in silence, if you've ever felt like your heart was something to hide, let this story remind you. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are worthy of love. Like, comment, and subscribe if this story touched you. And tell me in the comments, would you have let him in, or walked away?